Good morning. This is Angela with today's A Cup of Tea. How many times in your life have you declared an absolute? And an absolute would be, I would never do this. I will always be this way, or I will always do this, or I would never do that. I would never be that kind of person. These are really important to look at on our journey to enlightenment, on our spiritual paths. And it's time to sort of step back and take a look at why. Because many times, what happens when we put in place an absolute is we are really putting something on top of it to try to protect ourselves from facing a fear, an anger, resentment, a regret, a rejection, or an anxiety that we have underlying that we're not ready to look at. Why would you never be this way? Or judgment too. That's another thing, judgment. And that also has to do with the worthiness thing and lovability and all that kind of stuff. But why would I never do that? Why would I always be that way? Why would things always be the way they are, or the way that I, perceive them to be? When you start looking at that, we can start picking apart the pieces of some of the important things that we do need to release. Because many times when we put out that absolute, that's what I call them, absolutes. I would never do that. Guess what? That brings it up to the universe to actually give you a situation that would cause you to get rid of that absolute, because it's not serving you. It's not serving you. From my understanding, the only absolute in the universe is universal love, is unconditional universal love. That is what God, Spirit, Creator, universal life force, that's what we're all a part of. And all the rest is what we've created for the existence and for the experience. So everything else is sort of an illusion. I mean, I know many of you have probably heard that. Yeah, it is. But we've made it all up because, and we've done such a great job in thousands and thousands of years of this earth time in more than that. But anyway, in developing the perception of absolutes, and that we have to do things a certain way, that things are a certain way always. So that's an underlying, because all the laws of the universe, like I said, the only things, they are the laws of this universe, or the laws of the universe of this existence, and we can break them. I have talked about this many times. One time Krishna came to me in meditation and told me that straight out. We made the laws, we can break them. We can change them. We can eliminate them. We did all of it. And in recognizing that empowerment, that's a really big piece. But the first step is coming into our individual perception, our individual experiences, and saying, where is it that I am laying down absolutes? Why am I laying down those absolutes, and what's underlying them? Because so many times I see when somebody says, I will never do this, the situation happens, or a situation happens which causes them to do that. Oh, and then they get into all this defensive and rationalization, but well, that's only because of this and this and this and this. Oh, so then that was an absolute. Well, that's really the truth. That's the truth of how we live. And again, if we are so adamant about something where we say, I will never, or I will always, then there is something underlying to ask ourselves and say, why is it I feel this way? Why is it I feel that I would always be this person, act in this way, or never do something? You never know. There are so many movies and books and everything about extenuating circumstances. How many times have we heard that term, extenuating circumstances? Well, then that means that it isn't an absolute. So, before we say I would never, number one, sometimes it's good to put ourselves in other shoes. Sometimes we have to say, why is it that I have this? I know someone who went through this really serious time of financial difficulties, and had to go through this whole path of experiences. And in talking to him once, and this is after like about 2 years of him really struggling, and finally coming out on the other end, and still having some hang-ups, and found out that it was because of a perception of something that happened with his parents when he was a kid. And he had sworn to himself that he would never let that happen. Well, why is that? And in doing so, the universe, at some point in his life, at the same point probably where his parents were when it happened to them, it created this similar situation that was different, but then caused the same kind of snowball effect. Wow. And just think how much we do that to ourselves. And finally, when that judgment was released and the understanding, acceptance without judgment of the situation, and understanding that things happen and certain things happen in in certain unpredictable circumstances, and just these layers of events that can happen that can cause certain events, other events to happen. That's the fun of how we've done this experience, this existence. And so what was funny was when he was finally able to release that, everything got resolved and he was able to move on. But it took so long for him to bring that up and say, yeah, this was something I swore would never happen when I was a kid because my parents went through it. Wow. Because you didn't understand and you said, I will never do this because of what? Because from his perspective as a kid, it was terrible just because of how he chose to experience it. And his kids are fine in this kind of situation. His kids have never really seen any of this. And it's just been, and dealing with it in a different way. And so that's so powerful when we can look at something and say, why have I always said I would never do this? What's the judgment underneath it, or the fears, or the anxieties, or all those negative energies? And when we can clear those out, when we can say, I have released my nevers and always and my absolutes, then we can really, really change our perspective and start releasing the absolutes that we consider the laws of the universe. And then we can really have fun. Then we can do all the fun stuff that we're getting to. So that's your homework for this week, is to sit down and to write down on a piece of paper things that you say or things that you feel, or you say, I would never do this. Things that really bring up something deep in you. Because sometimes, you see something on TV, you see something on the news, which I refuse to watch anymore. But you see something and you say, oh my God, I would never do that. I would never be that kind of person. Oh, really? Well, do you know what that person's situation is? I mean, again, now we're judging and we're not coming from love. And we can say, okay, I can understand this person's situation. This is how they reacted. It might not have been the highest and best, but this is what happened. And this is the experience they chose to have with it. When you can release that and say, well, you never know. Never know the extenuating circumstances that might happen, or something that might change, or something in my life that might change. So many times people say, I would never have kids. I will never get married. I will never get divorced. I will never even be with another person besides my spouse. I will never, never, never. I will never have that kind of job. I will never live in that kind of neighborhood or in that kind of a house. Wow. How many times we put that in there? Because underlying judgments, and judgments relate to those negative energies, those negative emotions that we have to clear. And there's a purpose for that. Why? Because we're afraid of this. Because then we're not worthy. Because then we'll be judged. Well, no. Because we'll judge ourselves. Because. So your homework this week is to actually write that down on a piece of paper. What it is that you have that are absolutes within you, that you say, I will never do this. And then look at them, because many times those are really deep fears. And I'm not saying that the situation is going to happen, but what I'm saying is, if you release the fears, the judgments, and the negative energies, the anxieties and resentments and anger that would cause such judgments or such fears that are being fed under the surface by having that kind of attitude, if we can bring those up to light and transform them, release them, then guess what? There's even less of a chance of that ever happening because of that. When you become fluid to it and saying, well, okay, I can see that, I can see it, and I can understand it, and I just release it without judgment. So, things to consider. Here's the clearing for today. And it is, we're going to take the first step in releasing our absolutes and having to have absolutes. So, would you like all the following without trauma, drama, or illness, without creating or recreating a situation for illustration or experience, and all with ease, grace, balance, harmony, joy, fun, excitement, adventure, love, humor, and bliss? Would you like it for all versions of you, all times, all places, into the ever-expanding universe, to infinity and beyond? Would you like to receive all information for this clearing to come via instantaneous and comprehensive download with fully conscious understanding in the moment, version, and timeline from which it was requested? And then would you like to get creator's truth and understanding, perception, and definitions that come in through this clearing? Would you like to have them all replace your own and become your own for divine alignment? And in saying that, would you like to dissolve, resolve, release, and clear all etheric binding agreements that require you to adopt absolutes, that require you to use definitions as absolute, to have absolutes as definitions of yourself, to hide judgment and negative energies from using them? And also, would you like to get from creator understanding on how it has served you to have them, how it will serve you to be without them? To thank all parties involved, to open the doors to apology and forgiveness in all directions to and from all parties involved, and download the knowledge and understanding and feelings of apology and forgiveness to and from all parties involved. Would you like to pull all related beliefs, including I must do blank, I can never do blank, any kind of definition that says I must always, I must never, I have to, I can't, I mustn't. Those are all absolutes. Pull all those beliefs. Pull all the beliefs that you must have absolutes. All the fears and anxieties, regrets, rejections, resentments, and anger that are related to that. And all of the energy and memory of that from the cellular level. All related self-limiting thoughts, words, and actions from the cellular level. Transform into Creator's lights and back to Creator. Close those receptors and open new ones. Saturate the cells with the highest vibration of Creator's unconditional love. And download the beliefs. I can be without absolutes. I can see the understanding of what's behind every situation. I know how that feels, and have Creator give you teachings on that, and how to do that, and how to see that, and be fluid to that, and in acceptance of all situations without judgment, and releasing, and how to move forward and releasing the concept of absolutes. To know how that feels, to know how it feels moving forward, to know that you are worthy, deserving, and able to, that is possible, allowed, okay, and safe to, that you're ready, willing, and able to, and that you have that in your life right now. And then would you like to write off as complete in the Akashic Records, heal, resolve, and clear the timelines in all directions to infinity with the violet and platinum flames, and offer to all ancestors and descendants as they so choose to accept? To do that, take a deep breath, clear your mind, be open to receive, and say, yes, absolutes. And that's it. Have a great one. We'll talk to you later in the week. This is Angela. Today's a Cup of Tea.